We get to continue in worship, and part of that is to continue to pray for one another and to uphold each other, to check in with each other. And some of you know Bronco Tomic. He's been having some heart issues with AFib and some fluid around his lung. He's actually in the hospital right now, and so I know that they would appreciate your prayers as you're having your time with God to remember Bronco and Linda. There's also a bunch of other needs in this congregation, so I'd encourage you to connect with people around you and to make sure that they're doing okay. If you haven't seen them in a while, send them a text and just say, hey, I just missed you. I want to make sure you're doing okay. But as we continue in worship, I wanted to begin this section of our service with some prayer. Father in heaven, you are such a good Father. We may have good fathers here on this earth, or we may not, but you surpass them in your greatness. And I just praise you that we can lift these praises up before you this morning. I thank you for how you've already directed our thinking through these songs and through the scriptures that we've already read together. I thank you that you are a God that's accessible. Lord, as we think about the various needs that's represented, some of them I know, some of them I don't know, but you know every single one of them. And right now I just lift up Bronco and Linda, that you would comfort them. I pray that you'd give doctors wisdom as they're trying to provide the best treatment possible for Bronco in this season. Pray for Linda, that she would continue to trust you with this condition with her husband. I just pray that through it all that you would strengthen them. Lord, as we dive into your word here, I ask that you would bless our time together and that you'd work in our lives in a way that only you can. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen. You know, one of life's greatest treasures is memory. Love memories. We have so many memories. In fact, as I started thinking about some of the memories that I had, I was thinking through various smells as I locked into some smell memories. One of those is my grandfather's garage, or was his garage. I remember walking into his garage. He was a mechanic, and there was a distinct smell of that garage. And anytime I get around a garage that has that same smell, I'm like, I'm right back with my grandpa. It just brings me right back. My other grandfather, he worked for the paper mill downtown, and he would always say, do you smell that? That's the smell of money. Or that's the smell of home. And I remember, and even though I didn't live here, I was just visiting with him. We would drive down towards the plant, and we could smell that. And so as soon as I smell that familiar smell, it transports me back in the car with my grandfather. I've got a lot of great memories with those guys. I also have great memories with some of my friends. One of my friends, his name was Greg, in high school. We did everything together. We just loved each other's company. We played video games. We shot pool. Even though we weren't that great at it, we enjoyed it. We ate food. We actually, when I was in high school, went to the Bahamas together. That was crazy cool. Me and him and his mom, we got about a week down in Bahamas. Awesome trip. I had another friend. His name was Ben. And for whatever reason, my parents thought it would be a good idea to allow me and Ben and my younger brother to go to Six Flags in Chicago by ourselves. And so we took off. His mom actually dropped us off the gate, and we didn't see another adult we knew for the next several hours, and we could do whatever we wanted. It was awesome. A lot of good memories. Then I got into college, met this wonderful lady. Her name's Katie, and we started dating and hitting it off. And then I remember the time where I was going to take that relationship to the next level and ask her to be my wife. And we went out to a dinner, and I'm in college. I had about 5 bites of my supper. That was unheard of for me, a college guy. I was so excited and yet nervous about what the rest of the night was going to unpack for me. So we finish up the dinner portion of the evening. We went to a park, and I'm shaking like crazy. I'm like, I don't know. I think I know what she's going to say, but you don't know until you ask. And so I get down on one knee and ask her to be my wife, and she says yes. I was relieved, and I was excited. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, but hey, this is going to be great. We get married. A little while later, unknown to our timetable, we figure out we're expecting Chase, and I remember in our apartment, like, oh no, we're just figuring out how to do life, the two of us, let alone bringing another person into this. And there was, again, filled up with all these memories. We had the next two, and it was the same kind of things. You know, I could talk for a very, very long time about all of these experiences. And if we had time, and if I could come to every single person, I'm like, hey, give me like your top 5 memories. I'm sure we could fill hours and hours of conversation revolving around this. And though we all have these memories, and your story is your story, it's not my story, my experiences are my experiences, there's something very, very similar between all of them. You know what it is? If you start to think about your highlight reel of the things that stick out to you, and the ones that you would talk to me about, you would say there were people involved. All of these trips, they were all about people that I got to experience with them. And I would guess that you would be in that same boat. Even if we were saying, well, I don't have the greatest of family units, we have our tribe, our people that we just like to do life with. Maybe that's coworkers or our neighbors or some friends that we have just developed a great bond with. And so as we go through life, we want to experience life with somebody else. We just want to hang out with them and tell them all about it. So in the time where you may get mandated to take a business trip, you go there and you say, you know what? I can't take all my tribe with me, but that's okay. We start taking pictures. Why do we do this? We want to remember all the stuff. We get back from our business trip and we pull out our phone and we say, guess what? I got to go here. And that doesn't do its justice. I tell you, that view from that mountaintop was gorgeous. It was breathtaking. And we try to explain it to that person that we love and care about, but it just doesn't really go. And you're scrolling through, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that was hilarious. And we tell them why it was so funny, and they're like, it's not that funny. But they're pleasant because they love you, so they smile and say, you know what, I'm so glad that you had a great trip. Sometimes we don't even wait to get home to start talking about our trip. We just post the pictures to social media and have people interact with us from a distance. See, we are relational people. We were created by a relational God to enjoy relationships. But the thing is, God calls us actually to form meaningful relationships through intentional actions. He says, I want you to enjoy these relationships. I want you to experience what community would look like. And he's actually saying, you have to do this, and it's through intentional action. It's not just going to happen by accident. This need for connection was not some idea that a psychologist observed or created. We were, in fact, created by God with this built into us. When we start to begin in the very first book of our Bibles, this book of Genesis, we see that God is creating everything. He creates everything in this world. He says, I want the plants and the animals and everything that's in the world. And he says, man, everything is so good. But then he gets to the creation of the human race. And as the verse says, the Lord said, it is not good. Interesting observation, isn't it? He gets to all the things he's created. He says, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good. And then he gets to man, and he said, and yet it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him. See, God wants us to live in community. Because we were created in his image, he is a relational God. And inside of that, all of a sudden, we start to see some strengths emerge. In fact, the wisest man to ever live, his name was Solomon, he wrote it like this. He goes, although a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. See, when we are living in community, when we have those people in our lives, it actually strengthens us. And many times we find ourselves weak and discouraged and maybe even depressed, and yet we have somebody who comes alongside of us to walk with us, to give us help and guidance. And other times we may be in a great spot in our minds, and we can walk in and say, you know what, I'm in pretty good, so how can I help you? Do you need a hand up? I'll walk with you through this difficult time. See, there's a mutual benefit of us doing life together, because life is actually better connected. And yet, as we think about this, we think, man, life is better connected. Yeah, I get that. It sounds great. Good job. Thanks for sharing that. There's questions that arise. Specifically, how do we do life together well? Yeah, we have all these people in our lives, but how do we develop these deep, meaningful relationships, the ones that would honor God and that aid us in life? And we would maybe struggle a little bit with this, but God says, you know what, this is important. I want you to understand you are created for relationships. So he gave us 59 different verses. 59 different verses on how to do life together well. And as much as I would love to sit down and just open up all 59 of these, we'd be here forever. Okay, so we're not doing that. But I did want to provide you the list. So if you scan that QR code, you can find the button that says One Another Living. And I would encourage you during this week to go through all of those and to read through that list, maybe get around the context, and maybe that could take up some of your personal time with God. It would be a very worthwhile pursuit. Today we're going to look at 3 indispensable actions to having meaningful relationships. The writer of Hebrews directs our first thought. First action. He says, but exhort one another every day, as long as it's called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. Some translations would render that, but encourage one another, to help someone, to plead with someone, to encourage them to walk in a way that would please God. So if we're going to have these deep, meaningful relationships, we first have to understand that we have to encourage someone. We actually have to get outside of ourselves and to encourage someone. To encourage someone just simply means to give support or advice to walk alongside so that they will continue in a course of action. He goes, now the writer of Hebrews is saying, you, the people of God, I want you to open your eyes to the needs of those around you. I want you to encourage people today. In fact, do it today, don't delay. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to pray about it. We don't have to wonder if we should. He says, do it. Just encourage somebody. Help them out. Give them some encouragement. And he offers this really practical reason. It says, I want you to encourage someone today so that the deceitfulness of their heart won't take them astray. That's on us. This is what our encouragement actually does to somebody. See, encouragement strengthens the heart. It gives us the motivation to keep moving forward. You know, we are people who love comfort. We love our emotions and we love our feelings. In fact, those were given to us by God. It's not bad to have them. But sometimes when we don't receive these kinds of words, we chase after them in different areas. It's like, people, you love God. Help others. Keep giving other people that encouragement. Please help them go forward towards God and not away from Him. Because what can happen is that other people can come in and start to say other things that will actually take us away from God. They may say things, you deserve it. It will be worth it. Just give in. It'll be all right. It's only affecting you. It's like, no. Let's develop that inner circle of people who actually are going to encourage us with the biblical truth that we know. We could say stuff like this. It's like, man, I love your intentional focus. It seems no matter what you do, whatever you put your mind to, it's done with excellence. I can tell that God's worked in your life in a profound way. And I just want to say, keep up the great work. Or I just want to tell you that whenever I'm around you, I feel so much better. You know, life has a way of pushing me down and getting me discouraged. But when I come to you, when I find my time with you, all of a sudden I feel amazing. I'm filled up. And I just want to say thanks for being you. Thanks for being an encourager. I just want to tell you that whenever we spend time together, it is so good. And you are that catalyst. See, we should give specific compliments, not general ones. Sometimes this is how we give compliments, or this is how we give encouragement. Hey, good job today. Way to go. That's all right. That's okay. But how much better would it be if we would zero this in and gave them a specific to encourage them towards that path towards God? You're like this, I know that it must have been so hard for you to tell the truth, and yet you did it. You didn't know what the outcome was going to be, but you told the truth, and I just want to tell you that I was really impressed with that. That took a lot of courage. Or you could say, man, your spiritual habits are so impressive to me. I know I probably don't tell you this, or maybe I've never told you this, but I've always looked up to you. I consider you one of the most spiritual, influential people in my lives, and I just want to say thank you for that. And some of us, as we start to think about this idea of giving encouragement, you're like, you are serious with this. You want us to give encouragements like that to everyone. That's what the writer of Hebrews is saying. Absolutely. Now, some of us, we get into this phase and it's like, man, that was never modeled to me. I didn't see that growing up. In fact, when I was in my house, I was always never enough. I was always met with criticism, or you could have done better, you should have done more, you should have done this differently, and I never got encouragement. And it's hard when that's been our MO. But here, the writer of Hebrews is saying, I want you to encourage someone. So it may just take a little bit of practice. But you know what they say, practice makes perfect, right? We all know that phrase. We apply that all over the place. We're not always the greatest at our job when we first start off, but we keep showing up. And the same is true for this. You will have an opportunity today to encourage somebody. And you could come up and say, good job. It's like, it's a step, right? We may get tongue-tied and twist over our words, but it's a step. And you said, it wasn't the best compliment I've ever given, but it was a step, and we should do that. Later on in Hebrews, he says this, he goes, and let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works. So he goes, I want you to encourage others because it will keep people safe. It'll help them pursue God, but encouragement impacts other people. He goes, I want you to start to encourage somebody somewhere. You know, for me, I'm a competitive person. I like to win, so much so that I make competitions out of virtually anything. So, for example, my wife and I, we would be talking, and this isn't too far from reality. I said, I bet that shed light is on. The kids were outside, they were playing with their balls and their bats and all that stuff. I guarantee you the shed light is on. And she says, I disagree. I think the shed light is off. And I say, bet. Said, if it's on, what do I get? And she goes, are we really going to have a competition over if the kids left the light on or off? Yes, and I want a milkshake. If I'm a winner, I'll get a milkshake right now. She goes, fine. I open up the window and I look out. I'm like, they're off. She knew it. I lose my milkshake. I'm upset. I said, do you do this with other people? Absolutely. I did it with one of my coworkers, Mark, our worship pastor. I forget what this was all about. We were thinking about how something was going to turn out. I said, I bet it's going to be like this. He goes, I bet it's not. I'm like, all right, I'll buy you lunch. That's how confident I am that I'm right. It unfolded before my eyes, and lo and behold, I had to buy the guy lunch. I was not happy. I make competitions about all this stuff. What if, though? What if we take that spirit and say, I want to make encouraging someone else to do something good my competition? What if we set this up in those types of terms? Says, you know what, today I'm going to give 5 compliments before I go to bed. What are you going to give? How many are you going to go for? What if we encourage each other to give those compliments? To give something nice to somebody else. I will tell you, when we do that, it actually makes us feel good, but it fills that other person up so much when we give a genuine compliment to them. So the challenge that we have is to look for one way you can encourage one person today. In fact, what I would like you to do, and not just put in the blanks in your notes, I would actually like you to put a dash beside that and say, this is the person I'm going to encourage today, and just jot their name down. See, if we're going to have these relationships, the ones that we are created for, we need to be encouragers. But it's not just enough for us to understand that from a kind of a mental vantage point. We actually have to put some teeth to it. We actually have to write some things down and hit some goals to say, I'm going to be an encourager. Paul, the apostle, further instructs in Galatians, he goes, carry each other's burden. And in this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. Our second indispensable action is that we need to carry someone. We need to carry someone. Do you know, life has a way of beating us all up, doesn't it? Every so often, we just go through these periods of time where we're just down, and it's hard. And this is how it happens. We get going into work, we punch in, the boss calls a floor meeting, and we all walk up, and the boss says, hey, I regret to inform you, business is slowing up right now. I've got to cut everybody's hours, no overtime, and in fact, you're not even going to get 40 hours for the remainder of the week, and probably for several weeks. I just wanted to let you know we're doing everything we can to drum up some more business, but we just simply can't pay you right now. And that's hard. And you say, well, I don't know how many hours I'm going to lose right now. I'm not going to get any overtime pay, which is terrible, but then I'm also not going to even get my 40, which is terrible. So how am I going to make ends meet? I need that money to survive. And yet, this isn't the first time it's happened. You said, you know what, we'll just watch our expenditures. We're not going to go and do the dinners out, and we're just going to stay within the essentials. We're just going to do food and the utilities, and we'll be all right. We'll weather this. So you finish up the shift, jump in your car. Halfway through, the car starts making this weird noise. Like, thank you so much for this. And I'm not a mechanic, but I think that maybe, just maybe, this is going to be expensive. But we don't have the ability to process that, so we just turn up the stereo and ignore it. Like, clearly the car's still running, so it's probably not that bad. I'll just get home. And we're like, I can't fix it, and we just drive it. And it's working. It's not bad. It's still working. It's still functional. So we just put up with it for a couple of weeks. All of a sudden, we go in to work, car's still working, it's fine. But then we just get this kind of tickle in our throat. And we can't stop the coughing. And we're like, it's this time of year. It's the temperature changes. I always get this when the temperature goes. It's just this time of year. Maybe it's nothing. It'll just blow over like it always does. And those few days of annoying coughs then turn into a week, and it's starting to settle into the chest, and it's starting to sound really, really barky. And you're like, I've felt this before. It feels awful similar to bronchitis. But I can't take time off work. I won't get my paycheck. I can't go to the doctor. I can't afford that. I'm just going to suck it up and go for it. And all of a sudden, we are just down and out. And he says, what Paul is saying, he goes, I want you to carry someone's burden. I want you to come alongside and put a shoulder into it for them and to say, I'm with you through this. Sometimes that could be a financial responsibility like the one I just described. Other times it could be stressful. It's just stressful. There's a lot of unknowns, and all of this stuff is starting to mount up, and it's creating sleepless nights. It creates worry and anxiety. But sometimes when we're trying to carry someone else's burden, it just means coming alongside of them and to help them in a time of need. Take a look.
He hurt his arm at work and is not supposed to lift anything over 2 pounds, and we heat with wood. As time was going on, we were getting very, very low on our wood, and some members of our home group and some members of a couple other home groups as well heard about it, and we ended up having a bunch of people come over to our house.
And time is a commodity with a lot of people. It seems like we're always running out of time to do things, and these people took a lot of time to come over to our house and help us. They basically left their families to come and help us. They come, like I said, they cut the logs and split them all and stack them all in the cages, and we keep our wood in metal cages, and it's easier for me to move the wood to the boiler and stuff like that in the cages. It was just wonderful. I mean, it really saved our bacon.
It was a huge blessing to us. We have enough wood now for the winter, and it was just, them coming over and loving on us and saying, hey, you guys need help, here we are. And they took care of us.
I can't explain the wonderful feeling that it puts in my heart that they would come on over and help us like that. And we were really in need. We were down to 3 or 4 cages of wood, which would have lasted us about a week and a half. And now we've got enough to go through the winter and keep our home warm.
I guess for me, the one way that I would look at it is, you always have those friends that say, yeah, you need help, call me. Yeah, you need something, call me. And then you call them and they're busy. Or they can't do it, or they've got this going on, or they've got that going on, or, it's kind of short notice. And it showed, they kept their word. They kept their word, they showed up. They did the work, they did the work till it was done, and it showed me that they valued us because they showed up and took the time, and they valued who they were keeping their word for. They valued that testimony.
It's wonderful, and it does so much good for us to be able to help some of them at times, whether it be shoveling snow off somebody's roof, or giving them a ride, or being broke down on the road, we can go out and help them. It does your soul good to be able to help them. When you're feeling down and out and you feel like you've got all these burdens of the world on you, and we all do. We all have those big burdens. And all of a sudden now you've got people that are willing to share that burden. And that's what it's all about, is to celebrate and worship God and to share the burdens.
That's a pretty daunting task when that's how you heat your house in the winter here in Michigan. And yet a group of people, actually a couple of groups of people came and they said, man, these aren't some verses that we read. These aren't just something that we like, oh, that's a good thought or good concept. They said, no, we are to carry each other's burdens. And so today that involves splitting wood and stacking it. I think they put up something close to 12 cord. Is that correct? About 12 cord or so? 32 cages. That's a lot. If you've never done it, that's a lot of work. And they said, I just love these people, and so we're going to do it, and we're going to carry someone else's burden. See, carrying a burden will require time, energy, and perhaps money. And so sometimes when we start to carry someone else's burden, all of a sudden what they just gave to us, they said, man, I'm overwhelmed. When Paul says you have these burdens, they're overwhelming. It's like, man, I can't even figure out how to take a step because it's so heavy. And we come alongside and we put our shoulder into them and said, you know what? I can't solve this either. I can't fix this. I don't have enough money to fix this. I don't have enough wisdom to fix this. In fact, this situation is so far beyond my control. I'm not sure how to make sense of it. But here's my promise to you. I'm putting my arm around you. I'm going to take part of that. And I'm going to pray with you. And I'm going to cry with you. And I'm going to walk with you until we get through to the other side. When we carry each other's burdens, that means I'm going to give up of my time and my energy and maybe even some money if that's what's required so that I can lighten the load for someone else. As Gary said, we all have these burdens from time to time. And I will tell you, just from a meaningful part from my relationships, the relationships that matter most are the people who showed up when I was in need the most. And that etched into my mind forever. And my life has never been the same because of it, simply because they looked at this verse and said, this is how we're going to live it out. Paul goes on to say to the Corinthians, he goes, so there should be no divisions in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. I will tell you, when we start to look at all the needs that are represented in this room, and then when we think about everybody who's watching online and saying, man, there's a lot of needs out there. There's a lot of people that are hurting and that need help. How can I solve everyone's problems? And the truth is, we can't. If everybody's needs were dependent on me to solve, you wouldn't get very good care. But when we find ourselves in smaller settings and smaller groups, all of a sudden, we can have some care for everybody, and everybody gets to experience this. Everybody can have a meaningful relationship in which someone cares for everyone. There's sometimes where we are in need of that care, where we need the extra meal or the extra hug or the extra conversation. But then there's going to be other times where we said, you know what, I'm in a good spot and I can help you, and so I'm going to help you. And we're going to just do life together, and we're going to make sure everybody gets some of this care. It's not just that Gary and Shelley had this experience. We had another family who experienced something similar. Let's take a look.
Before I even went to Bridge, it seemed like the people at this church are just like chomping at the bit to help people, like aggressively. And I grew up in church, and I have never really felt that way. I kind of always felt like they were very cliquey, especially I was very anti-small group. And I just felt like I was always weird and a burden. And so we kind of were people that tried to never ask for help and live on our own. And for probably a good 10 years, we just didn't go to a church, and we just did everything on our own, and we were very lonely people. Then when I started seeing through Jen and Phil, like what Bridge was like, I was like, this seems kind of crazy. Like, I've never met a group of people that just like want to help you when they don't know you. And they just mean it. They want nothing in return at all, and it was weird. I love our small group. Like, I am frankly very shocked about that because it's not a place where I feel weird about being myself, I guess. In the group that we're in, there's a lot of ages and just a lot of different personalities, and everyone just is kind of just sort of a melting pot of people, and everyone's just kind of okay with each other, and everyone just, if they can help, they do, and there's no it's not like a tit for tat kind of thing. There's been so many instances. A big one in my mind is when we had our house fire. This was before we were even attending Bridge. A whole bunch of people just showed up to help. We didn't attend this church, and they all just assembled and were at my house to help haul stuff out of the garage. And coming from a life where we had no community to all of a sudden this was just available to us was kind of nuts. Even just this past Christmas, our small group we had a planned thing to like all decorate Christmas cookies together. And so I'm sitting there with my two girls, and we're just decorating cookies, and my husband comes in and says, "Holly, your parents' house is flooding. We gotta go." And I was like, emergency mode, because in my mind, fires and floods are really immediate, terrifying things. I just stand up and I just look around this room of people, and I'm just like, somebody take care of my kids, and we just run out of the church. To have that kind of trust, because they're just little kids, and to just trust that someone's gonna occupy my children and not let them get lost and not eat all of the cookies, which I don't think happened. But when we got to my parents' house, like, I just immediately went to assess what was happening, and it was so much. So I just sent a text to one of the guys in our small group, and I was like, if anybody can come, send everybody. And I mean, I swear within 10 minutes, there were 3 guys that just showed up and start just hauling stuff out of rooms and pulling the washer and dryer out and sopping up all the stuff and getting stuff moved out, cutting up carpet, hauling it out of windows. Like, everything just like happened so fast because we had help. Because we were able to clean it up so fast, we didn't lose like a ton of stuff. I think that's such a good example of like when you're trying to do life alone, everything is so much harder. And like, especially now, like our American culture is so like isolated, and everyone do everything by yourself, and you can't trust anybody. And it's like, I've lived that life, and it was exhausting and unpleasant. But to have these people that just sacrifice of themselves so willingly and so happily is kind of a wild thing. And not only to be the one constantly needing help, it seems like it's nice to have it's nice to be in a group like that, to have the opportunity to help, because it's like, my goodness, I want to give back to these people because they've all done so much for me.
It's amazing to be a part of a community that genuinely loves God and genuinely loves people. And I say that because I look at these one another's and say, man, how can we do that more effectively? And I say we have to be intentional with the actions and the people we do life with. There's too much isolation in this world. And so when problems come in, and they will come in, we all know that they will come in. It's like, man, how can we weather that together? Well, God says, hey, I want you to do that. I want you to trust me, but I've also provided you a community of people. And I want you to do life with them, and I want you to be open to their involvement in your life, and to be open and willing to share some of those struggles and those burdens so that they can help and be a blessing to you, so that you can see a picture of me through them. These important relationships are vital for our life and well-being in the spiritual life. And so the challenge becomes how or I will lift someone's burden. And in fact, if you think about this for a second, I bet you there's people in your area, in your circle right now, that are struggling with something. And it's like, man, I may be in that spot for a strategic purpose to shoulder some of that burden with them, and I already know it. There's some needs that are all around. We just simply need to open our eyes and start listening. We can see the hurt and frustration. And I say see that when it's like, isn't that words? It's like, no, it's all over our faces and our body language. And we can watch somebody who is pushed down and discouraged and say, maybe I can help lift that one up. Or maybe we start listening with our ears and all of a sudden it's like, man, there's depression and discouragement and hopelessness. And so I want to come alongside of that person and say, I'm not sure if I can answer anything, but I'll at least be a friend to them in this moment of where their need is great. So every morning we wake up and we say, man, what can I do to help just one person carry someone's burden? I can't help every single person, but I can help at least one person. And who is it going to be for me today? Peter then offers our final indispensable action. He goes, show hospitality to one another without grumbling. Our third action is to invite someone. We have to invite someone. That means we're going to invite them into our space. That means we could invite them to our home for a meal. That's certainly something that Peter probably was thinking about. But he's quick to say, do it without grumbling. We're not doing this to get some pat on the back. We're not doing this to get the return favor that if I invite you over for a meal, you'll invite me over for a meal. It's not that. He says, I just simply want to invite you into my house. No strings attached. Just come over and have a good time. Hospitality just means to show love to someone. That idea is certainly presented throughout Scripture, but it actually carries someone who doesn't or who we don't know very well. And now for some of us, we're thinking, wait, I'm supposed to invite people who I don't know very well into my space. Peter, when he wrote that, what would happen so often is that they'd have out-of-town travelers come in. And they didn't have a spot to stay, and they didn't have the hotel systems that we have today. And he goes, so if you see a new person into town, say, come on over and enjoy a meal with us. Now, for some of you in this room, you're like, man, that sounds awesome. I get to hear about all these cultures, about where they're coming from and where they're going, about their travel. That sounds exciting. You extrovert. All the other people like, that's terrifying. You mean you want me to invite a stranger into my fortress called my home and to give them a meal? Yeah. And that's kind of intimidating, and that's hard for some of us. So we take those practical steps and say, you know what? Maybe we can just invite them into an afternoon with us. We invite them to spend some time with us. We say, you know what? What if we go out and do some ice skating? What if we just enjoy an afternoon doing some ice skating? And I'll tell you, the way you phrase these questions is of utmost importance. Sometimes we invite people and we say, hey, we're going ice skating. If you'd like to come along, you're more than welcomed. Not bad. But watch this. If we go on the other side and say, hey, I would really love to go ice skating, and actually I would love it if you joined me when I went ice skating. I would love it if you could come with me. Do you see the difference? This one's saying, we're having a party that you're welcome to crash. We don't really care if you come or if you don't come. But on this side, if we come over here and say, man, I love it. I would love your presence. It would be an honor if you came with me. It's like, they are the party. Without them, it's not going to be as good as without them. So we say, we'd love you to come with us. And they accept the invitation because like, well, shoot, I got nothing else going on, so yeah, why not? So we accept it and goes, that's so awesome. You know what? I'm so thankful that you're coming. I'm going to bring a whole bunch of hot chocolate for everybody. I'll have enough for everybody. Or maybe you're feeling really generous and say, after we do ice skating, we're going to stop at a coffee shop and I'll buy for everybody whatever you want. I'll take the bill. I just want to say it's great to get to know you. He said, why would you do that? To fulfill what God told us to do, to show hospitality to someone. We do that one simple action, and who knows, that one simple invite may change their view on everything. It may change their view on what it means to live in community with somebody, just because you are willing to break the ice with them. As you spend time with them, you can also invite them to share their story. If you're doing the ice skating thing, as you're talking, as you're making the laps around the rink, you said, so tell me a little bit about your story, about your upbringing. Did you go to high school? Where did you go to high school? What do you do for a living? And all of a sudden, you're starting to form connection, and you could invite them to an experience, authentic community where people genuinely love other people and love God. And we just simply are vessels to help people see that. So the challenge then becomes invite someone to do something. We look to these and say, man, after every single one of the points, we had a challenge, yes. And at this one, I say, again, maybe you have somebody who you don't know very well, and you could jot their name down. Maybe you've been coming to Bridge for a little bit, and you're like, you know what? We sit in the same pew every single week. We're creatures of habit. And you look down, and it's like, I don't know if I know that person. Hi, my name is, would you like to? And we invite them somewhere. If you're kind of a little bit shyer, here's a practical idea. Invite them to go watch a movie with you. Or say, out of all the activities, why a movie? Here's the thing. If you're kind of concerned with carrying the conversation, you got 10 minutes. 5 minutes before the movie starts, and then you say nothing for the next hour and a half to 2 hours. And then you say, what did you think about the movie? And they say, I thought it was great. Awesome. See you later. And it works. It's like, that's cool. I got to go to a movie with somebody I love. That's great. That's cool. We start a friendship. It starts small. But then you maybe say, you know what? That didn't go so bad. What if we go grab lunch? Let's have a conversation at a restaurant. Again, it's a small spot, but it's another step higher than, say, going to the movies. Maybe you say, oh, that wasn't so bad. What if I want to bring them into my house where they really get to experience me? They get to see where I live. It's a personal invite, and so we invite them into where we live. Say, man, I value you as a person, so come on into my house. And if you're feeling really adventurous, you could take that up another level. You could say, you know what, I'm going to invite 2 or 3 or 4 people over at the same time. Say, why would we do that? Because now all of a sudden, instead of just being hospitable, you are now a catalyst. And maybe the people you invite will become really great friends. And you simply back off. You provided the environment, and they connected, and they got to experience community within them. And you said, this is great. I got to help people experience something that will change their life. See, God created us for relationships. He created us for community. But he didn't just simply create these inner longings and desires in our hearts. He actually said, I've done this on purpose, and I've given you an instruction manual to have meaningful relationships. And yet sometimes what we look at to this one another list, we're like, man, that sounds great. Who's going to do it for me? When we walk into a space, all of a sudden we want someone to welcome us. We want someone to say, hey, it's so good to see you. I'm so glad that you're here. And we're like, thank you. It feels great to be in your presence. I will sign autographs. I'm here all week. You know, that's kind of how it goes. We want people to treat us like that. But when I look through this list of the one another's, do you know what I see? The implied you. You, Paul, have the responsibility to go and encourage someone. It's not someone else's job to do that. It's my responsibility. So I'm looking to encourage people, me, whether or not they ever do it back to me. I'm going to go to them, and I'm going to give them the compliment, and I'm going to give that encouragement to keep pursuing God and keep pursuing the right kinds of things in life. I'm going to do that. I'm not going to wait for someone else to do it. I'm going to reach out and say, man, is there a burden that I can carry for you? I'm going to look for those needs, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to see, and I'm going to walk up and I say, man, I'm just curious. I'm just wanting to remind you, I'm here for you. I don't know what's going on in your world, but I want you to know that I'm available and I'm praying for you. Do you have a prayer request that I could be praying for you so I can shoulder this with you? And whatever they say, they may say, no, I'm good. It's like, okay, but maybe you still have that kind of feeling that that's not the full story. So I'm just going to pray for you anyway. Do you mind if I pray with you right now? I've never had anybody turn me down on that. Whatever they share, we remember. We jot it down. And then in a week or two, we follow up and say, hey, how's it going? You asked me to be praying about that. I've been thinking about you all week long. I've been praying for you. How's it going? And all of a sudden, it's like, whoa. A lot of people just say, yeah, I'll pray for you because that's a nice thing to do, but we never do it. But you said you were coming in, and I'm praying for you, and I'm following up with you, and I'm seeing how you're doing, and I'm making sure you're okay. And that means something. And I'm not waiting for somebody else to carry that burden. I'm not waiting for someone else to fulfill the need of cutting wood or helping with the flooding or a house fire. I'm not going to let someone else get that credit. I want to go in and help that person. I'm going to do it. I'm not waiting for someone else to invite me over. Rather, I'm going to invite people to my life, into my space. And I will say, one of the best spots that I've seen this on display is within the context of a small group. I've been a part of small groups throughout my life. And I've watched those people that have been involved in my life, so they get inside and they get to know me in a way that not a lot of other people get to see. They get to see me struggle. They get to hear my struggle points for the week, and they come alongside of me and they say, man, Paul, we love you, and we want to just see you continue to please God in all that you do, and they walk alongside of me. And then there's other times it's like, man, it's my turn. I get to walk alongside of you, and all of a sudden we form this bond. And we may have differences of opinions on about everything, and yet we're united because we said, man, life's too hard to do it alone. I'm just telling you, if you're not in some type of community group like that, you need to get to one. Life is incredibly difficult. In fact, it was never designed to go alone. Never. And God says, so much so I'm putting 59 direct commands about how to have meaningful relationships. Maybe you're here and you say, man, I would love to talk about getting into one of those groups. You can scan that QR code and say, I'd like to find a group, and we'll get in contact and get you hooked up with a group that could help you in your space of where you're at right now. But at this point, every single one of us has to do a little bit of work. Every single one of us has to make a commitment. This is the commitment. I will commit to, and for some it says, I need to commit to encouraging someone. That's what I need to do. For others, I will commit to carry someone. That could be a commitment. And for another, it says, I need to commit to invite someone. And then throughout this whole message, you've been jotting down names or maybe initials or something to the side of that, or maybe you just didn't even do that and you just said, you know what, I don't even need to write the name down. I know who it is. Circle one of these. Put the one that you're going to commit to in that blank. Put, I'm going to encourage someone, and that's enough. We start to help people experience the community and the life that God wants us to do. When we do that, we will actually start to enjoy the relationships that God's given to us the way he intended us to do. Father in heaven, I thank you so much for giving us a community, for giving us this church where we can actually do life with one another. I thank you that there's so many practical outworkings of what we've discussed this morning already present. Lord, I pray that you'd help us to continue to please you with following these one another commands. Lord, may we reflect your love for others, and may we reflect the community that we have with you, with someone else today. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.